meeting of the select boards of Bolton, Lancaster, and Stowe. I don't anticipate any votes being taken this evening, certainly, but we are going to call to order nonetheless the Bolton Select Board. So it looks like we have all three members of our select board here. And I would invite Stowe if they wanted to call to order.
Sure. The Stowe Select Board has a quorum. We have member JT Toole and member Ingeborg Hegeman, and I think those are the only two that I see right now.
Okay, and for Lancaster,
Lancaster board does not have a quorum, is represented and will speak.
Okay, thank you. So thank you all for attending. This is, obviously a lot of people have responded to the call to have a discussion about the budgeting process for the towns and the regional school district. So I just wanted to take a minute for all of us to introduce ourselves, and we'll start with Bolton and then Lancaster and then Stowe. As I said, I'm Kate Bayuk and I am the chair for Bolton.
Hey everybody, I'm Brian Boyle. I'm also on the select board for the town of Bolton, and I'll pass it to Bill.
Hello, I'm Bill Nichols on the select board for Bolton.
Marie Salvero, Town Administrator, Bolton.
I'm Linda Herbison. I am the Minuteman School Committee rep.
Bob, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Bob Guerrero. I'm the chair of the Bolton Advisory Committee.
Okay. Lancaster?
Yes, Dick Trussell, chair of the finance committee. And I'd like Roy Rizak to introduce himself.
I'm Roy Rizak. I'm the vice chair of the finance committee in Lancaster.
I'm Ralph Gifford. I'm a member on the Lancaster Select Board, and I'll pass it to Jason, who is our chair.
Jason Allison, Lancaster Select Board.
And John Woodsmall, Lancaster Town Administrator.
Thank you. And Stowe?
Hi, I'm Megan Bertrick Michael. I'm the chair of the Stowe Select Board. I'm going to pass it to JT.
I am JT Toole, member of the Select Board, and I also sit on the Capital Planning Committee.
I'm Ingeborg Hegeman, a member. I'm sorry? I'm Ingeborg Hegeman, a member of the Stowe Select Board.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dan Peterson, also a member of the Stowe Select Board.
And I'm Denise Demkowski, Town Administrator in Stowe.
Hi, everybody. I'll jump in and say that I'm Leah Viverito. I am not necessarily here representing Stowe. I'm the chairperson of the Neshoba Regional School Committee.
Okay. Thank you. Lancaster, did you want to call to order since you have a quorum?
Absolutely.
Do not have a quorum unless the select board would like to call to order.
Yeah, thank you, Dick. I'd like to call to order Lancaster Select Board, part of the Tri-Town meeting with a roll call vote. Ralph Gifford. Ralph Gifford, are you there?
Sorry, apologize. I muted myself. I'm here.
And Jason Allison here. David Carr will be absent. So that is 2-0-1. Thank you.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is really just to establish kind of the goals of this meeting. My intention in getting everyone together is just to have a conversation, not to make any decisions. But one of the Bolton Select Board's goals for the year is to establish some revenue sharing principles with the school district. And the first part of that goal is to meet with members of Stowe and Lancaster to understand their revenue constraints and priorities, and let us articulate ours, which would be followed by discussions with the school committee members and the regional school district. So that's the perspective that we're coming to this meeting with, is to have a discussion. And I'm happy to hear any other goals or thoughts that anyone else would like to take out of this meeting tonight.
Yeah, I can jump in. So Jason Allison, Lancaster Select Board. It's a little bit part of the intros. So what Lancaster suffers from is a lack of industrial commercial development. Probably every town suffers from that. We are about 90-ish% residential tax base, and about 68 cents of every one of our tax dollars is to go to our amazing schools. But what that means is, as housing prices go up, taxes go up, and our residential residents right now are really being impacted by the increases and not offset by any new industrial commercial. So that's our biggest challenge today is figuring out a way to get everything a little, making sure it's not volatile and making sure that, we can have a plan in place. Lancaster did pass an override. We did pass the school, but we were about 55-45. So there's a considerable number of residents in Lancaster who are paying attention. And it's really important that the Lancaster Select Board, figure out what options are out, be a good listener, be a good teammate, and figure out how we can move forward as a team here. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to jump in with just general goals for tonight's meeting?
I think our goal, this is Megan from the STOW Select Board. I think our goal is obviously to listen. We also are primarily residential have a residential tax base, sorry. So definitely we understand that kind of a challenge. I'm sorry?
Oh.
Sorry, I think someone is unmuting themselves while I'm talking. Anyway, so I think we're just going to try and listen. We are three very separate towns that handle things differently. And so I think some of the constraints and the issues that Bolton and Lancaster may have, Stowe doesn't necessarily, even the way that our finance committees are run, that we are, again, three different communities. And so I definitely want to listen to these concerns, but I don't know that we operate exactly the same way. So I will leave it at that.
I do have a request, if I may. Kate?
Sure.
Dick Russell from Lancaster. We would like Bolton and Stowe and Lancaster to keep a record of the people moving into their new large housing projects so that we can project from town to town what will happen as these projects are filled. We need to know the age of the buyers or the renters. We need to know the number of children. But children is not the problem. Students is what we're really after. So we need to know that. We need to know whether they take 1, 2, or 3 bedroom apartments, etc. This will help us forecast from town to town as we each have a large building project going on. Thank you. I don't know if we can get to it tonight, but that's my request anyhow, Kate.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure that's something that we can tackle tonight, but certainly that is a factor I think that we're all facing. The next item on the agenda is just a general discussion of municipal configuration and budget timelines. In Bolton, our advisory committee is already kind of in the throes of budget season, meeting with departments. I believe that they have a first meeting with our school committee reps next week at their meeting, just to have a general discussion about where things are headed. And then they are formally on the advisory agenda at the beginning of March in our budgeting process. So that's just sort of where we are in terms of the school budget. We obviously all have not yet heard numbers from the district. If I understand correctly, they have their budgeting workshop on, I think, January 14th, so that's coming up pretty soon. Does anybody else have any other timelines that they're working with, or, timelines that they're expecting to need to meet before town meeting?
Capital planning for Stowe, will be having our first meeting this coming Thursday. We'll begin the process of reviewing all of the capital requests in conjunction with our town administrator, Denise.
Well, and I can jump in as far as our budget process. It's a different process, as Megan alluded to in Stowe. The Finance Committee in Stowe is strictly a recommendation authority. It's my budget. It's my budget that goes to town meeting. I meet with the departments, and it's a very fluid process. I don't have numbers from the state. I don't have numbers from the school. We don't know our insurance numbers. So I'm actively working on it over the next few months as we whittle down what our revenue and our expenditures are looking like. But I don't have a set timeline. It remains a really fluid process on the Stowe side.
Bob, did you want to jump in and say anything else on the advisory end for Bolton? So I'm sure I'm not getting it right.
Sure. Yes. Again, Bob Guerrero. I'm the chair of the Bolton Advisory Committee. Our process is a little more structured and formal. The advisory committee meets weekly with each department and the town administrator, and we review all of the budget lines. And at the end of the day, we present a recommendation to the select board as well, but it's another set of eyes that looks in detail through the whole budget. And so between late December and end of March, we review the entire budget and capital items. And then, that gets rolled up into the warrant in preparation for annual town meeting.
Okay. Anyone else have anything on that? The next item is just a very high level fiscal outlook for fiscal year 2027. From the Bolton perspective, everybody probably knows that we just successfully passed an override of $1.9 million in May of this year. And that override, together with the costs from the borrowing from the high school, have just resulted in an average tax increase to Bolton taxpayers of north of $2,000 a year. So right now, with the override money, we are in an okay position, but we are very concerned about the outlook for the future, because there's just so much uncertainty from the federal level, from the state level, with inflationary pressures. So we, I think, are very, very guarded about what the next few years look like, hence our interest in having a conversation with everybody here about, how to approach the school budget, which for us, is about 67% of our budget is related to schools, and slightly over 60% of it is Neshoba Regional School District. So that's where we are right now. Lancaster?
Go ahead, Jason.
John, did you want to go over from the fiscal side?
Sure. So just in terms of generalities, we're in the middle of the budget preparation process right now. We'll be submitting a budget to the Select Board and Finance Committee end of January, beginning of February. The same pressures that everybody else is facing in terms of increased costs for healthcare, I think healthcare is really one of the biggest drivers of everybody's budget right now. And it's a big unknown. We're waiting for the estimates to come out middle of this month, end of this month, and just trying to balance everything in terms of the services that we're hearing from people want. We did have an override about 2 years ago, I believe. It was before my time here. And I don't fully know our situation right now, but there's just a lot of pressures that we're seeing on all the fronts.
Stowe?
Yeah, I mean, our situation's not unlike the other two towns. Health insurance is definitely the wild card for us this year. I only have one collective bargaining agreement that's up. Everything else is settled, so we know all the salaries. Again, we're in a little bit different situation. I have 1.8 million in excess levy capacity. I have new revenue coming in of just Prop 2.5 and new growth at over $1 million. So we are financially in a better position. I think we have not had an override. We have no intentions of needing one for a few years. And we have a large private for-profit school coming online this calendar year that is expected to bring in a significant amount of revenue to the town. So while we are still conservative, we still don't just increase budgets because we have the funds. I still budget very conservatively, but our concerns are on a smaller scale, as our other two towns are.
Thank you. One of the other things that we've undertaken this year in Bolton is to do a little financial forecasting and modeling, just so that we have a better appreciation for what Bolton's facing in the next several years. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Bob Guerrero to take you through what some of our projections look like for the next few years.
Great. Thanks, Kate. Like Kate mentioned, I have just a very short presentation here to just describe the approach that we've taken in Bolton for some a little future forecasting. And I have just a very short number of slides to walk through this. Okay, as Kate mentioned, Bolton last year approved a $1.9 million budget override. That was the first override we had in Bolton in over 20 years. As you can imagine, there was a lot of discussion throughout the town in the lead up to this override. One of the lessons that we took from the whole process was that there was some real benefit in better future budget forecasting. So with that in mind, our advisory committee put together a very high level model to estimate future revenue and expenditures. And this is a very simple model. It's based on our budget spreadsheet, and it just allows an input of a few various inputs on the revenue side, and then some inputs on the expenditure side, and you can extrapolate those out. This runs out 10 years. And some things that can be adjusted are the new growth rates, local receipt rates, and state revenues. And on the expenditure side, salary and wages are lumped together. Insurance is a category that can be adjusted, employee benefits, education, and then all other expenses. And in this model, we capture three different sets of inflation rates, like a low inflation, a moderate inflation, and a high inflation, just to give a sense of what the projections are in the future. There's no expectation that anyone can see any of these numbers. I'll have more details in a second. And I say this is a very simple model because it assumes that, if you set a rate, that rate stays the same for the entire duration that you run the model out, which is, obviously an oversimplification. And in reality, things would be much more dynamic, but it's just one way to sort of get a sense of what some of the drivers are and how sustainable or unsustainable things might get out in the future. Okay, So that being said, here are some results, and these are just 5-year projections because again, the further out you get, I think the less reliable the numbers become. So we've settled on a 5-year projection, and you can see the inputs on the left. Those are the values that we put in on the revenue side and the values that we put in on the expenditure side. And what we've captured in the chart in the center is what's the cumulative difference between revenue and expenses after 5 years for each year, going out 5 years. And so if the low inflation model rates are correct, you see that that's sustainable at least 5 years. And in fact, the cumulative difference is growing. So we're accruing a surplus. The moderate inflation case is okay for a few years and then it goes negative, and the high inflation case is bad news right out of the gate. So from our perspective, maintaining growth rates as close to those low inflation values as possible is really necessary for us to maintain a sustained solid fiscal health. So we then looked at, well, what if we can't get the numbers close to that low inflation model? As things vary, what are the significant drivers? So in this chart, there's a baseline case. This is that low inflation model. So it's a baseline case where after 5 years, we have roughly $2 million excess. And then we varied everything except education plus or minus 1%. And that's the bar in the center. And you can see there's a range of values. And then the bar on the right, we kept everything constant except education. And so you can see again on the left, this is the baseline case. If the low inflation numbers are correct, after 5 years, we have a surplus. If our expenses are 1% less than that low inflation case, then we're in pretty good shape. We, after 5 years, have more than $3 million in excess. If our expenses are about 1% higher than what we had in our low inflation model, then we're still positive, but not by much. The bar on the right says that everything is constant except education. And here we see that if we misjudge education, if it's 1% less than our low inflation case, which would put it at 2% growth, then we're in great shape. Education is 1% worse than that low inflation model, so the growth is at 4%. We are very negative after 5 years. So the upshot of all of this is that as we look out in the future, our future impacts to our operating budget are twice as sensitive to variations in our education expenses as all other expenses combined. Of course, that shouldn't be a surprise. It's not a surprise because the education expenses make up 2/3 of the budget. So naturally, they would have twice the impact of everything else in the budget. So the takeaway for us here is that maintaining the education operating assessment as close to that 3% target as possible is really critical for us. And so in the Bolton case, this is what that would look like. Last year, we had an operating expense assessment, and I focused on the Neshoba Regional School District here because it's more than 90% of our total education expenses. So our assessment last year was right at 19 million. A 3% increase for FY27 would look like about 19.6 million. But that's just the Bolton share. Obviously, there are 2 other towns. Our share happened to be 33% last year. So if you extrapolate that to the full total assessment target on the operating side only, comes in at about 59 million. So one potential approach is to come up with a desired not to exceed number and present that to the school district as a target. Keeps all of us out of any of the details of how the school budgets get worked out, but it gives them a target number to stay within. And finally, this is my last slide. This just shows you what this looked like last year. So the operating budget for Neshoba Regional School District last year was about 70 million. This was from the March presentation to the towns. It may have changed a little bit in the last couple of months. But anyway, it was 70 million. And you can see the operating budget assessments for the 3 towns that totaled about 56 million. The difference between the operating budget and those operating assessments was Chapter 70 funds and some fees and those sorts of things. But anyway, this is the number we're talking about when I say that a target not to exceed assessment number. It's targeting what last year was this $56 million number. And, you know, our suggestion for FY27 would be about 59.3 million. Okay. That was all I had slide-wise.
Thank you, Bob.
Back to you. If there are questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions for Bob in terms of the process that we went through with that? Okay, so
Bob, excuse me, quick question. Bob, Roy Rezak from Lancaster. Would you be willing to share that model and the software behind it? I assume it's a spreadsheet or something that's not proprietary?
Yeah, there is no software behind it. It's just a spreadsheet.
Okay, fine. Would you be willing to share that?
I would be comfortable with it. I would look to our town administrator and select board. You know, it has our budget numbers in it. If they're okay with it, I'm fine with it.
I mean, I think it's a public record at this
Right.
point anyway, so. Any other questions for Bob? I don't know if Lancaster or Stowe have gone through a similar exercise or if they have anything that they would want to share in terms of their forecasting for the next few years, or particular concerns or pressures that they're thinking about, you know, in the next 5 years.
So I'll jump in real quick. I mean, I don't have a presentation, but the math is simple, right? If we can only, assuming no new growth, and we can only increase by 2.5 every year, if the service increases by greater than 2.5, the money's got to come from somewhere else. And that's Lancaster's reality. We're always looking for new growth. We always are looking for our commercial industrial, and in the past decades, it hasn't been there for us. So we have to be conscious about this, and anything that we can do to be partners to the school district and partners to our Tri-Town teammates, we're open to, because we don't have a lot of options. That's the reality, and our assessments are going up, and residents are not going to get happier. Maybe that would be a good way to phrase it. So something's going to have to give, and we're going to have to figure something out, because I'm not sure another override would ever fly in Lancaster. So we don't have a lot of options at that. I don't know, John, if you want to add anything to that, or Ralph, if you have any comments.
No, I think that's a good summary of it.
And I agree with Jason. Yeah, we passed an override. I think it was 3 years ago. I sense no stomach for their override. Jason's absolutely right.
Stowe, do you have anything for? I know we sort of heard a little bit about, you know, from Denise. Do you have anything further to add on that?
No, I don't. If anyone else on my side does, feel free.
No.
Okay. So the next agenda item is common challenges and differing perceptions. And one thing that I think is common to all of us who have showed up for this meeting is the serious nature of how all of the towns need to approach the finances, their own finances, as well as being sensitive to issues impacting the school district and their finances. I mean, we are all, you know, the select boards and the school committee members, we're all elected officials. We all have jobs that we need to be doing. And one of my goals, at least, is that even though there is a natural tension between the jobs that we need to do, I think that we can be cooperative in working towards the goals that we all share of running our towns and our schools successfully. And I think that opening this dialogue is a good way for all of us to at least be on the same page as to what's going on in our member towns. I did have a very helpful conversation with Leah last week, that, I think, really, we're all on the same page about trying to get this important work done, but there are natural tensions that we need to address and figure out how to meet all of the needs of our different constituencies. And speaking for myself only, I'm frankly surprised there wasn't already a procedure like this in place where all of the towns were talking to each other and talking with the school committees as we go through the budgeting process. I feel like it was sort of a lot of the towns reacting to the school committee. I don't think the school committee necessarily knew what financial pressures each of the towns are facing. So I'm really hopeful that by being a little bit more open and transparent about these things, that we can get to a better outcome. Like Lancaster, we did our override, but I would not want to go back to the good taxpayers of Bolton and ask for another one. This is something that we need to figure out how to work out together, while still achieving all of our goals. I don't know if anybody else has any other common challenges or differing perceptions that they'd like to share, or other goals where you think that we've got common ground that we can work on.
Yeah. Kate, this is Megan from the Stowe Select Board. I agree that it needs to be a cooperative process, and I'm really glad to hear that you had a conversation with Leah. It was very important to me that the school committee be involved in any kind of a discussion that the select boards were having, especially since we are both duly elected officials. And so I did not want our select boards to be in a position where we are telling the school committee what to do as far as putting their budget together. I think it's important for them to understand the financial constraints that our separate towns have. But I do worry, and I did worry, and I expressed those concerns to you as well, as to what our role is as select board members versus what the school committee members are. So I'm glad that Leah is here tonight. We will certainly be having a meeting within our own town with our school committee reps as the budget process goes forward, to make sure that everybody is kind of on the same page. I assume, again, because we're three separate towns, that Bolton and Lancaster will be doing the same thing as well. The Tri-Town meeting, Kate, just for history, the last time we had it was during COVID. I was the chair then. And quite frankly, and candidly, it was a hot mess of a meeting. It is very difficult because we do operate in three different ways to get the three towns to really kind of understand where everybody's perceptions and issues are coming from. So I'm really glad to see all of these faces who can speak to that tonight on this. And hopefully, Bolton and Lancaster will understand from Stowe's perspective how we do our budgeting, and then we can also understand how Bolton and Lancaster do theirs, because I do think that that transparency is important as well. And that is all I have to say.
Anyone else? All right.
Kate, this is Ralph Gifford. We've been talking a lot about finances and budgets and that sort of thing. I suspect probably all of us here want to make sure that this does not lead to the impression that we want inferior schools. We want great schools, and I want to make sure we don't forget to convey that message as well. It's about figuring out how to pay for it, living within our means, and that's basically a reality we have to live with, all of us in our lives. But I want to make sure we don't leave here thinking the select boards are only thinking in terms of money and are not concerned about the schools. We are concerned about schools. We want great schools.
No, I think that's a valid point, and I think we all agree. I mean, I think a lot of us moved to our towns because of the school systems and have enjoyed the benefits of them for our kids. I will just say from my own perspective, being on the select board, that I have to balance that concern about the schools with making sure that there are roads for school buses to drive on and police services for all of our constituents and fire services and libraries. So this is the natural tension that I was talking about between the select board and the school committee, you know? And I mean, the long and the short of it, honestly, is every dollar that the school committee gets to run the schools means they're doing a great job. And every dollar that we get as from our taxpayers, we have to balance between the school and the rest of the needs of the town. So there's tension there that we all need to acknowledge in terms of being able to successfully run both the town and the schools.
Well stated. And I especially appreciated your mention about the roads, fire, police, et cetera. Yeah, we have a lot of things that we need to do, limited funds.
Yeah, Kate, I'll just add a little bit here. I was at the last Tri-Town meeting and it was painful, but I do believe it was necessary. And I'm really grateful that we've started them back up. I know that Lancaster's been asking for them and there hasn't been an appetite for them. I don't remember the last time that I asked for one. It's been years, but there hasn't been one. So I just want to applaud you for putting this back together because Lancaster needs it. Lancaster needs this conversation. Lancaster can't afford to not have this conversation. It's not what our residents want. And talking about roles, I mean, all of our budgets go to town meeting. The select board doesn't vote and approve a budget, right? So thinking about the select board's roles is going to be to advise residents on, do we think this budget and the school budget portion of it is good or bad for Lancaster? And there is a line, I don't know exactly where it is, but there is a line where the budget is not good for Lancaster. And I'm sure for all of your towns. So, to the Lancaster Finance Committee, the school committee, we all need to work together to figure it out because 2.5 is what we get to raise every year unless we get new growth. So it's pretty basic. And I'm just, Kate, again, I'm grateful that you've started these back up. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Kate, I wondered if I could ask a quick question.
Sure.
Hi, everybody. Leah Viverito again from the school committee. I watched the presentation to your select board a little while ago that was given from the advisory committee on the future forecast. And I watched it again tonight. And I'm just trying to make sure that without any deliberation, I'm just trying to ask, I have 2 clarifying questions about the materials that I wonder if I could ask them.
Yeah, go ahead and ask. I don't know that I'll be able to answer them, or maybe Bob will.
Give it a shot.
Okay, great. Awesome. So without the group's benefit of having the presentation up, and you don't need to bring it up, I think I saw in the revenue box that you're saying that you're predicting that local receipts will be at 2% next year. A 2% increase.
Let me check.
And
yes.
Forgive my
Yes.
novice.
Nope, that's right. That's what we plugged into our model.
Isn't it normally 2.5? Or am I messing that up?
The max.
Well,
Can we increase at 2.5?
This is not the levy increase. This is just local receipts.
Oh, okay. So you're saying that
Excise, meals, excise taxes, those sorts of things.
and property tax increase?
No, so I mean that is built into that's the Prop 2.5 increase. That's all just built in.
But you're taking that Prop 2.5 increase into account when you build out all of these models?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then new growth at 0 for Bolton, is that because there's no new homes? I don't know Bolton's market very well.
Yes. So no, that's a great question, and it requires a little bit of explanation. So the growth rate was set at 0 because we in Bolton have consistently had just a flat new growth of roughly 200,000 per year. And so in the model that we didn't project that to change dramatically, with the exception of we built in a slight bump up for the new housing development, the Alta Neshoba development that we'll see in the next year or two.
Okay. And then I think that my last question, and I don't mean for this to be probing because I know that we don't have a quorum present, but we have a few members here. And I just I'll ask this question at our school committee meeting too and bring it up. But I just wonder if maybe all the boards want to weigh in on this, or because I think that this is something that we're kind of dancing around and it really does need to be stated plainly. I'm noticing that you're projecting your town spending, and this is just for Bolton, not the other two towns per se, but you're projecting your spending is going to increase 3% for salaries, 6% for insurance, and 10% for benefits. But the school district combined can only increase 3%, including insurance and benefits.
So yes, so those are the projections built into the model. Again, it's a future forecast. There are a lot of uncertainties. And so we picked something that we thought was a reasonable estimate, given where things have been historically.
But I think that my question is this, and this is just where I'm stuck. And maybe you guys can clarify, and then we can talk about it later, perhaps. But you're saying that your benefits and your insurance are going to increase by average of like 7.58%. But the school district's insurance and benefits, therefore, will probably increase by the same amount. I mean, maybe more like they did last year. So the piece that we could control is the salary, relatively speaking. And so that would then, are you saying that that would then put us in a situation where the salaries are maybe at 0%?
No. It depends on, like, you know, in Bolton, I don't know what the school district's budget is, but in Bolton, those, even though the rate of increase is large for those, the impact to our budget is not enormous because it's a very small fraction of the budget.
But that's true, but the school district didn't reverse, though, that we have a very large number of employees, I think 600.
Yes.
And so the insurance and the benefit increase, even if it's a small percentage, it's huge. It's a huge raw number.
Right.
And so if we're only increasing our total budget, and this goes for Minuteman too, I guess. If you're saying that we can only increase total by 3%.
Yeah, I am just saying that from the Bolton perspective, we can sustain a 3% annual increase in the Neshoba operating assessment. Anything larger than that, and it's unsustainable for Bolton. How Neshoba gets to that 3% increase is up to the school committee and the school district. You know, I have really no opinions on how you do that. I'm just stating the math is that we cannot sustain larger than a 3% increase over time.
But could you keep your insurance and benefits to 3%? I think is what I'm asking.
I think that the point of this exercise is just to show what the constraints are on the town of Bolton financially. So yeah, I don't know that we broke out any of the numbers that would say what the individual expenditures within the school district's, you know, line items are. It's just overall 3% is what Bolton would be able to sustain without an override in the relatively near future, which I personally would like to avoid at all costs. And yeah, I don't think there's an appetite in Bolton for that.
Yeah, so I totally agree with all of you guys. I am a taxpayer as well. I might be in Stowe, and so it might look like I'm in a better position, but I want all of you guys to know that everybody sitting on the school committee, thankfully, is a taxpayer by design. And so we feel every bit of this the same way that you guys do. I hear your proposal of 3%. I know Stowe and Lancaster haven't put any such number on the table, but we can talk more about this at the school committee meeting. I hope everybody here will watch the school committee meeting so you can watch the school committee deliberate and kind of parse out some of the complexities that Kate was just talking about, because a 3% increase overall would be a complex number to get to.
So let me just jump in on that, and just broad strokes here. Lancaster can really only increase without new growth 2.5%. So if we have any service that says my increase is going to be more than 2.5%, the money's got to come from somewhere. So, and then there is a point where it is unsustainable, where all you're doing is, the percentage of that service goes up and up and up. And I think, Lancaster 68% of schools. I think I heard Bolton is 60%, and the show was 60% of their entire budget. So it's gonna something that's gonna have to give, right? Because you can't increase your revenue, for lack of a better term, by 2.5 and then spend more than 3 elsewhere. So that's the challenge to navigate, and we just have to figure out how we can do that. The closer we can get to 2.5, and I'm not throwing out that number, but that's what everybody's operating. Well, unless you have new growth, that's what everybody's operating at.
Yeah, so I appreciate you putting that on the table, because I think that residents need to hear this, because I think that they often come to the school committee and say, we want class sizes at 16. We want 15 counselors at the high school. There's a lot of requests that residents want at the public schools, but we obviously cannot afford that based upon what you guys are saying. And so I think that everybody who is a part of the system, whether they live in the 3 towns or not, have to hear this argument that something has to give.
Yeah, and sorry, just to add one last part to that, and not to get to solutions on this, but I think something that Lancaster residents, or I want to speak for other towns, is to almost, I don't know if it's even possible, but to see 2 budgets. What would it look like? What would it look like if it was only 3%? Would it be cuts? Would it be this? Would it be that? And that really quantifies, right, like what that actually looks like. And then that might be an easier pill to swallow, because it's not just more and more and more. It's like, no, this is actually what you're getting for it. And you're not voting for one or the other. But if you just see a number keep going up, you don't really know what you're getting for it. But if you can show what it would look like at a different number, then it might be more real, especially to, the school-age families in Lancaster. Thank you.
And I mean, one thing that I would also point out, my kind of drumbeat about the tensions that we have is giving more to the school to meet your goals means that we can't meet necessarily some of our needs that are increasing on the town side, like the need for emergency services, which is explosive in Bolton right now. The number of fire and medical calls are astronomical. So that's a tension on our emergency services and our police. But you're right. I mean, it's a matter of educating the public, and that's, kind of one of our other goals on the Bolton Select Board this year, is a lot more public communication and education, because, I mean, I'm on Facebook too. I see all the comments, and, I know what people want, and I know what the concerns are, and, it just needs to be clear to people that we're discussing it, that we understand what the issues are, and explaining what the consequences are of any decisions that the individual towns make, which is probably, time immemorial problem for small towns and small town government. This is nothing new. But, I think we can do a better job of communicating so that people can make informed decisions.
I want to add to that. The state has rightly set affordable housing goals. We need more affordable housing. And the only way we're going to meet the affordable housing goals is to build more housing. That's likely to increase bring in more students for the schools and increase our school costs. So to offset all of that, I think we're going to need more help from the state. I know last year at Connect 351, the state said they realized that they were falling behind on, or that their funding of their Chapter 70 funding is what I mean to say, was not keeping up with demand. And it was creating more and more problems. We need more funding from the state. We're going to need the state, I think, to help step up. If they want us to meet the affordable housing goals, that's going to break the system in a sense, potentially break the system if we can't get relief elsewhere.
Okay, any other comments before we move on to our last couple of items? Just
Hey,
wanted to,
Superintendent Downing rose his hand.
oh, sorry. Yep, Kirk?
Thank you for that recognition, Kate. This is just to get a clarifying question, as I heard a statement about increasing operational costs of the school district budget. As I went onto the Town of Bolton website and grabbed the draft budget from FY26 and just looked at the school district assessment for the Town of Bolton and divided it by the total budget number. Over the last 5 years, our portion has actually gone down 6%. So I'm curious about the rising assessment percentage relative to the town. That percentage was 62.2 in fiscal year 22. And then years afterwards, it went to 61.1, 59%, 57%, and 56%. So the school district continues to be a smaller portion actually of the total operational number. But I have to tell you, I just grabbed that off of what is posted on your website. So there may be more to that total budget number than my eyes are seeing right now.
Well, the numbers that I'm familiar with, and I certainly don't have them at my fingertips at the moment, are that the Neshoba Regional School District is about 60% of our budget, and total education is about 67%.
Yeah, last year, the Neshoba Regional School District operational assessment was 56%. That's $18,995,161 divided by a total budget of $33,917,952. So our budget has
That's
actually
just
gone
the
down
operational.
operational, right? But it
Right.
doesn't include the debt exclusions.
That's right.
And it doesn't include what's approximately $60,000 in debt that is a static sum. It's essentially the same over those same 5 years. So in regards to what the school district has done for the town of Bolton over the past 5 years, we've actually brought our share of the town budget down 6%.
Or raised your town budget by 12%.
Okay, so I'd like to move on to our last agenda items, which are whether there is interest among the other select boards to have further discussions relative to the fiscal year 2027 budgeting, and whether there's value in trying to set up further tri-town meetings for future years. My personal thought is, I think it would be really good to have had this discussion in October. And I would be interested in doing a conversation like this again in October of 2026, before we're really into the throes of budget season. I feel like, despite our best efforts to try and get this meeting done, it kind of has gotten a little bit late in the year to have all of the value that I think it could have had. But how do other towns feel about future meetings for 27 and going forward?
So from the Lancaster side, and I won't speak for Ralph, I do want to take a step back and talk about roles. I mean, we have a school committee and their role is well defined. We have a finance committee, their role is well defined. And what kind of, like, I'm looking at this meeting of talking about pain points and stressors and the vibe of residents. But really, like, what is our desired outcome? I understand the need for forecasting, and we should absolutely lay out from a high level. But at some point, I think the majority of this work, and maybe I just need a better understanding of the goals here, but it's really school committee and FinCom and the select board, I guess, would kind of do a thumbs up, thumbs down to the residents and talk about, high level. So I just want to better understand what our desired outcomes would be of future meetings, which, by the way, I love to have if possible.
Yeah, so my view of the future goals for the meetings are that we need to have this touchstone frequently to understand where all of the towns are, what is changing year over year, whether there are pressures that have changed or that have gone away. So I personally think an annual meeting just to touch base with one another and see where we all are makes good sense. Brian Boyle.
Thanks. Yeah, I actually just wanted to piggyback off of what Jason just said because it sort of crystallized a thought that I've been having this entire meeting around the roles and the natural tensions. And so I'm just gonna like try to explain how it's going through my head, which is that yes, in a sense, a select board for any town could get toward the end of the budget process and give like a thumbs up or a thumbs down. But I think speaking historically for Bolton, like if the select board were to say, hey, thumbs down to the school assessment at the very last minute, that would be shocking. And it would also be perceived by the public as being like, well, where have you been this whole time? Like you're just giving us a thumbs down at the end. So I think these conversations help to show that everybody's trying to be involved in the process along the way. But I also just want to name that I think a really big challenge and source of probably tension in terms of role is that, yes, the school committee is duly elected and has the legal responsibility to develop a regional school budget. But as a practical matter, and from the perspective of your resident who may not know all those legal niceties, like the select boards and the FinComs are the ones that have to sell the budget to the voters. And they're also the ones that are hearing from everybody who's not thrilled with the way things are going. And I acknowledge, like, maybe people at school committee meetings aren't hearing from those people and they're hearing from, we want lower class ratios and all of that stuff. And that's just a reality of like which constituents are showing up to which meetings. So I think the value of these sort of big group meetings is that we can try to stitch together the different types of constituencies that we're all hearing from in the different roles that we have. So I'd love to have another meeting because I like the team spirit that I sort of saw at this meeting.
Thanks, Brian. Ralph Gifford. Looks like you took his hand down.
Hi,
I'm sorry, I
here.
forgot to unmute. Thank you. I was talking and I forgot to unmute first. Yes, I definitely support having the meetings, and I think October is a great idea. One of the reasons why I think the meetings are important is when the school, when Kirk is working on the budgets, when the school committee is working on it, they need to know when they can start new initiatives, begin to plan for the future, or do they need to hold up, that type of thing. It's difficult to make plans and then have the rug pulled out from underneath. When we have these kind of conversations, I really appreciated what Stowe brought forward. The TA from Stowe. They're in a different situation than we are. But let's say that 2 years from now, Lancaster were able to come back and say, we've had some great developments here. We're in a better position. If you have some initiatives that you want to really tackle, now is the time to do it. This is the kind of communication that could be helpful and help everybody do the best job that they can to live within the constraints that we have. Thanks.
Megan.
Thanks, Kate. So from my particular perspective, I absolutely think that this meeting is helpful. I'm not going to lie, I did come into this meeting with holding my breath a little bit because I think that there has been a historical tendency to not necessarily work with the school committee on this. This is not what I'm seeing now. I do see that there is more of a spirit of wanting to work together and be transparent. And so I think if that is the through line that goes in the future, that's great. I think, these meetings can sometimes be a pile on. And again, that's not what I'm seeing tonight. And I think if there is a way for everybody to kind of understand what's going on, I would just want to go into these meetings really. I think I've said a lot about how Stowe works versus how other towns work. We have an appointed finance committee. And Denise, our town administrator, is the one who puts the budget together with all of the input from department heads and is very conservative about it. We definitely see the budget and we answer questions about it. She gives a great presentation every year. So I just would want to make sure that moving forward with this meeting is, from Stowe's perspective, just that we, are able to give the same amount of information. I don't know that in October, Denise is going to have numbers because that is not how she plans the budget. And so we can certainly have a recap to our, past fiscal year between now and October, but I don't know that we, and Denise can certainly speak to this, I don't think that Stowe would be in a position to be giving kind of any forecasting information at that point in time, but I would leave that to Denise or Brian Patuto, who is our finance committee chair, who has raised his hand.
Yep, Brian.
So I will jump in on this because the finance committee in Stowe rarely meets in October, November, December. The biggest the most active portion of our year is after Denise has already begun the budget process. So we would essentially at that point be forced into a position of just spectators, which we are not. I'm not opposed to that, and I think I would be happy to be a participant in that regard. But the challenge there really is the incompleteness of the information that I, as a FinCom chair, and the other members of my committee would have in that room at that time. That said, I still think it's a good idea. I think one of the most important things about that would be making sure that the availability of the members of the school board for all of the towns are available to be there. Because ultimately, I don't sell anything. Denise comes to us with a budget. We dig through it line by line, and we make a recommendation on what we think is a reasonable recommendation to the town. The only people who have any control over that, what we make as a recommendation is, or the information we recommend, is Denise and the school board. So if they're not in that room with us, we can do nothing.
Okay, so it sounds like this is something that we should circle back to next fall and sort of see what timing makes good sense for everybody. And the last thing, and I was going to invite the school committee reps to sort of chime in, but I feel like we've done that a little bit throughout. As I mentioned, we're starting some of our meetings with our school committee reps. Finance committee meets with them. Advisory committee meets with them next week to have a preliminary discussion. So I don't know if any of the school reps want to add anything else in at this point. Amy?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for organizing this. I'm always in favor of opening up lines of communication between the towns, the school committee around our budget, the school district's budget. I would just echo what I've heard a few members of the town select board say, in that if you truly want a future meeting to have the greatest impact, then I think it does need to include school committee members so that the message you're trying to get out there gets to the people who have the vote on the school district's budget. And I think that in the past, that's been one of the tensions with holding this meeting, is that it has appeared to be a meeting planned kind of
It's wrapping up.
Sorry, it's been something that's been planned without the knowledge of the school committee, and then we kind of find out about it secondhand. So I think that in order to make the school committee feel more involved in that process and partners in a collaborative environment, pulling them into this meeting, in my view, makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, it just seems as if there's a little bit of a power play going on, and at least in the past, that's the history that I have heard about this meeting, and I'm really appreciative of the tone that you set tonight, Kate, and the spirit of opening up, communication and sharing information. So, thank you.
Okay.
Kate, I see Dan's
I
hand
see
up.
Dan.
Yeah.
Just a point I wanted to make before we wrap up. So I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. And I'm speaking in this respect as both an educator and in a different school district and someone whose child's going to go to Neshoba High School someday. When we think about a lot of the well-intentioned goals that parents have about, X number of counselors, I'm just giving examples based on what I heard tonight. X number of counselors, school size of this. Anecdotally, I feel often that school committees receive their information from superintendents who receive their information from the principals. And though there might be a leadership team at a respective school, a lot of the concerns that teachers have about I'm hearing parents say we want average class size of 16, but teachers might be like, well, that might not be, although that's ambitious, I can teach effectively with a class size of 19 or 20, or even like small things like that, or our dollars best spent if we increase and add another counselor, just to give examples. I just feel sometimes that perspective, because the teachers are, they're in there, they're white knuckling it, they're getting through. But sometimes that, and I'm not saying that this school committee or any school committee is leaving those perspectives out or not hearing them. I can't speak, Leah and other committee members, about your experience in that regard of hearing or not hearing from teachers, but I just have found that to be the case, that's sometimes a voice that's not trickled down to the school committee. That would be valuable.
Hey, I would like to weigh in one more time in something that I told you already, but I'd like to share it with all the policymakers here. I think it's important to note that although I live in Stowe and I'm elected by Stowe people, every time I vote on the Neshoba Regional School Committee, I'm voting for Neshoba. I'm not voting for Stowe. And so to Amy's point, I think it's really important that you see us as a municipal entity that is whole and not necessarily representative simply of our towns, although being fiscally responsible for our towns is part of the job. But what I would say is, if as a Stowe resident, I do something that hurts Lancaster, that hurts Stowe. And that we are all, I like to think of us as three sisters or three brothers, depending on the day. And we are inextricably linked. And the success of Lancaster is the success of Stowe, no matter what our bank accounts say. And that when you seek the feedback or want to provide messaging to the school committee, think of us as one entity, because I vote for Lancaster as much as I vote for Stowe or Bolton. And what is good for you all is good for all of us. And so I just wanted to make sure that you all know that, and that all of the public knows that I'm not here just to, root for Stowe and get what's best for Stowe, because the way that Kirk leads this district, I'm very proud to say, is as one single entity, and he wants to make the experience equitable across the three towns, which is this really ambitious goal that he's achieving. So I would just say, like Amy, don't leave us out. We are part of this conversation, and we want to be your partner, and we don't want you to see us as adversaries because we're gobbling up a lot of the dollars. The fact is that education is the most important service that any municipality can provide, because our kids are the future. So And I'm a teacher too, so I can speak from experience.
All right, I appreciate that, Leah. Thank you. So just to wrap up, thank you everybody for
Sorry,
participating.
Kate.
Oh.
There was one more hand from Sharon.
Okay, Sharon, sorry.
I'm sorry to be jumping in at the very last minute. I just wanted to kind of add on to what Leah was saying there is that
I'm sorry, could you just let us know who you are? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm Sharon. I'm a school
Good.
committee member from Lancaster.
Sorry, thank you.
I just wanted to kind of tag on to what Leah and Amy were saying about appreciating, understanding the process. We all live in these towns and we all feel squeezed in the same way that everybody in all of the towns feels squeezed right now. Costs are going up, expenses are going up, and we all are working. We're all feeling squeezed and like it's hard to bring things together with the resources that we have. And at the same time, we're all working on, school committee is really looking at what is the best for our children and our families. And you're looking at what are the best for the constituents of our towns. And I think that the overall message here, which is we need to listen to each other and work together, is going to serve us much better than trying to than being against each other and trying to set limits or I'm not quite sure, I lost my thought there, but I kind of think that this is a bigger, it's a systemic issue, right? It's an issue that's bigger than any of our towns and any of our committees. This is a systemic issue where costs are going up and up and up, and revenue is not matching that. So the more we can team together, the more effective we can be in supporting each other. And I appreciate that opportunity to work towards that.
And just to wrap up on a sort of kumbaya note, one thing I think we can all do, and one thing that the Bolton Select Board did at our last meeting was sent a letter to our state representative and state senator to encourage them to release more funds to the towns. I know the school committee has its, the school district and superintendents have their own, efforts for lobbying for additional Chapter 70 money. So that one thing that we can all do is ask our state representatives to release more funding so that we can meet the needs of our different constituents. Kirk, just very briefly before we wrap up.
Yeah, it's just a brief little announcement for everybody in the room today. As we know, the development process, Kate, you just alluded to it. We learned today the governor's budget will be coming out on Monday, the 26th, I believe, which means because a press conference, I think, is scheduled for the 27th, Denise, or something like that. We got something today. So I should be getting my numbers Friday, the 23rd is what we're anticipating. So as a result, just want to level set expectations for everybody in the room. When we present our budget to the budget workshop this Wednesday, we are only going to be presenting the supply side, meaning the cost to run the district. So we won't be doing assessment projections or anything like that in this first round. That has caused some anxiety because the first round always looks double digits because we don't have all of our variables in yet. So we're not gonna do that in this first run of the budget, but as that information comes in, we will be putting out the assessment projections.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for participating and attending. And I look forward to seeing all of you again as we work cooperatively to try and resolve these challenges that are not going to go away. They are only going to continue. So the more we work together, the better off I think we all are. So I would entertain a motion for the Bolton Select Board to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Brian?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
And I am also a yes. Stowe?
I would take a motion to adjourn Stowe Select Board?
So moved.
Roll call, JT,
Yes.
Ingeborg,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
and the chair votes aye. We are adjourned.
Ralph, motion to adjourn.
So move.
Ralph Gifford, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Jason, I 201 Dave abstaining.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.